And we're live! Archived Memories, episode 375, with your hosts, Isaac.
That's me. I'm here to host things.
And your co-host, me! Alright.
He's not here to host things.
Yeah. Anyway, we're done. We're done with that bit. So we are back again for our every between 2 and 8 months episode of Archived Memories. I don't actually know what episode this is. I think it's 16?
I don't know. I can't count that high.
That's fair. Yeah, we probably lost you at like 3, honestly.
But they say the key to creating content is to be consistent, and we are very consistently uploading, not consistently.
Yeah, we are very consistently taking way too fucking long to record and upload an episode. And it'll be even longer, because then Steve will have it in his little editing bucket, his soggy, grimy little bucket that he keeps these in. So I mean, shit. By then, it may be 3-4 months between this episode and the last one.
I'm sure there's a witty quip on the video right here that's saying something about putting Kika in a bucket.
That's fair.
Aaron, that is.
Yeah, whatever you want to call me at this point. I think we've lost all semblance of consistency or getting used to doing anything on this show. So we're just gonna roll with it.
That's true.
We're going to also nix the bit where we talk about made-up cards, because I don't think that it's worth it anymore, and I would rather just talk about real Netrunner cards that actually existed.
Besides, after the last one, how much sillier can you get, really? What's the point?
Yeah, at that point, I don't think the AI can really top it, so just kind of a moot point. Alright, so without further ado, we're going to get started here. Shut up, don't you ever interrupt me again. With Zaibatsu Loyalty. And so, do you want to take this one by the horns?
Sure, as long as I'm not interrupting you.
Go for it.
Right. We have Zaibatsu Loyalty. This is a 0-2 res Jinteki asset. It is has no subtypes. Its text reads, if the runner is about to expose a card, you may res Zaibatsu Loyalty. 1 credit or to trash, prevent 1 card from being exposed. It costs 4 to trash, and it is 1 influence. Okay. Aaron, why is the anime drone art the best part about this card?
Which really says a lot, because, I don't want to spoil the flavor discussion, but I'm not even particularly fond of the art, and it is certainly far and away, like, orders of magnitude better than the card itself.
Yes.
And the simple reason behind that is that, no hyperbole, non-ironically, this is probably the single worst card in the entire game.
Yeah, probably so.
There's a lot of arguments to be made, a lot of arguments that we ourselves have already made on prior cards. But this card is terrible. I don't think anyone has ever used it, outside of just trying to use it for the sake of, using it because nobody ever has.
I will say, I did put this in a deck when I was brand new to the game because I thought part of accessing was exposing a card, and so that you could just pay a credit to prevent the runner from accessing things.
So, there you have it. All that this card needs to be good is just a fundamental misunderstanding of how it works.
Exactly. That was what was missing.
Yeah. Which, if that was the case, this card would be fucking nutso.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I thought when I read it. It's like, this is crazy. How come this isn't everywhere?
This is the greatest card ever.
There were reasons.
But yeah. So to kind of break it down, because I don't really know that this is going to warrant an extremely lengthy conversation. But to just kind of hit the hit the bullet points here, just trying to kind of cover the long and short of it. is that all this does is prevent a card from being exposed. That is what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use it. This does have an interesting effect, and this is one of the only, if not the only, Netrunner card, one of few for sure, that actually has its own like sort of self-contained like timing window that it dictates.
Yeah.
Because it does itself read if the runner is about to expose a card, you may res Zaibatsu Loyalty.
Yeah, so it interrupts basically the action that's in progress, whether it's from an infiltration or a snitch or whatever.
Yeah, so a kind of a rare and interesting card, just in that regard, in that it functions as an interrupt when I can't think of many, if any, other cards that do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it has that going for it. But other than that, all it does is prevent a card from being exposed, either by spending a credit or by trashing it. However, exposing cards in and of itself is not very good.
No.
So essentially what you're doing is spending deck space, even if it's just one, which if you're going to be, running a card like this, if you're that concerned about things being exposed, you're probably not just running one.
Yeah, maybe if you have an idiot friend that you play with all the time who was running a blackguard deck that you were having trouble with for some reason.
Yeah, one. If for some reason somebody was running a black deck guard, and then on top of that, if for some reason you were getting fucking wrecked by it.
Yeah, I think the problem might not be the blackguard if that was happening.
Yeah. But anyway, so essentially you're dedicating, deck real estate, so to speak, for a silver bullet against an effect that does not warrant one, basically, at all.
Yeah, you're silver bulleting a bad effect, and this does nothing besides that, so why?
Yeah. Completely worthless. Not to be, too harsh or speak in absolutes or, yada yada, only a Sith does some shit, but
they could have printed anything else and they did this.
Yeah. And that's pretty much all that's really all there is to say about Zaibatsu Loyalty, is there not?
Mm-hmm, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the Weeb art?
I think it's okay. Before we do move right on to flavor, though, and this is kind of a question that I've been really thinking about, kind of just moving into our normal rapport or, back and forth when it comes to discussing cards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, if you could change one number or, one word or whatever on this card, like if it was your job, like, hey, change this card as little as possible to make it good, like, how would you do that? How would you make Zaibatsu Loyalty card without just basically completely making a new card?
I'd give it a secondary effect.
Okay. What do you think?
Something like place, I don't know, 4 credits on it when you res it and take 1 off at the start of your turn. Something like that. So that it's at least not utterly worthless otherwise.
Yeah. What I was thinking may be interesting is, so keep its weird little interrupt thing, where you can just res it whenever somebody's about to expose something.
Mm-hmm.
And then just make it a constant effect that whenever the runner like exposes a card, like you get money for it. Like it doesn't stop the expose, but maybe like every time the runner exposes a card, you like gain 2 or 3 credits or something.
I don't think that really helps, because it's still a counter to expose. And if you wanted something to counter expose, okay, fair enough. But you need to have something else besides it. Making it a better counter to expose doesn't. There's still no expose ever. So, what's the point?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Maybe if it was 1 credit and trash to prevent 1 card from being exposed, or something else, something more useful.
Yeah.
Prevent 1 card from being exposed, or or one, you know, or one ice from, or one card from being trashed or something. Maybe, yeah, I don't know, just something.
Something.
But anyway, back to anime art. It's okay. Kind of weird. We had a very small discussion about this before we started recording, but it's very anime, which I've always thought was kind of weird. This art, more than a lot of art, has stuck out to me as being pretty out of place.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to fit. Like, I think it fits with the theme and even with, like, the idea of the card. You've got, loyalty to the Zaibatsu, we're all clones, etc., etc. It fits with Jinteki, but the art style seems off.
Yeah, this like just looks like it's a straight up just screen grab from some anime, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, flavor certainly and not, or flavor certainly not enough to make up for how shit of a card it is, and to prevent from what we are about to do to it on the rating scale here.
Yep. And what we're gonna do is give it a 0.
Yeah, there's just no excuse.
There's no redeeming quality to it.
Yeah, it's a 0. It's fucking garbage. Throw it in the real life trash. You could literally just throw this card in the garbage as soon as you opened your Netrunner core set, and your entire Netrunner experience for the rest of however long you played it would not be affected whatsoever.
Correct.
Which is to say that it's pretty terrible. I don't know that that can be said about many other cards, because other cards, if you just threw them away. Like if your core set was just misprinted and didn't come with this card, like you wouldn't notice. But I can say there's not a lot of other cards that would be the case for.
I would agree. Even like bad cards like Worm, every once in a while, someone wants to try to make Worm work, but Zaibatsu loyalty has no point.
Yep,
there's no purpose.
It's bad.
Yep.
Oh, it's bad. All right, but I think we're going to move on with that.
Sounds good. You want to read this one?
I sure do, brother. Next, we have Neural EMP, which is a 2-to-play Jinteki operation with the subtype Gray Ops. It reads, play only if the runner made a run during his or her last turn. Do 1 net damage. And it is 2 influence, again, out of Jinteki. So, Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this card a often overlooked ace in the hole in some cases?
It's all about your margins, right? So one of the difficult things, well, probably the chief thing running against classic Jinteki, is you're trying to balance the cards in your hand versus your accesses. You don't run on less than 3 cards, because if you hit a snare, you're going to die. This is just common practice. The thing Neural EMP does is it plays in the margins. You look at it, 1 net damage, this is very little. But if you can play it off of other things, or if the runner got a multi-access, they padded their hand up, but they hit a fetal AI and a snare. Oh, well, okay, now their hand is in big trouble, and they weren't able to draw up at the end. Or they were only able to draw 1, and say you have a couple of these in your hand. It exists in those margins. What it does is it narrows those margins and makes it more difficult for the runner to keep themselves safe.
Yeah, it's just more numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
More it's another card that affects the very important number, being how many cards does the runner have in their hand.
Right. Usually killing the runner comes down to, when you're Jinteki, the runner making a mistake, either in their math or in just their judgment calls. They either made a bad run, or they didn't correctly factor in everything that was going to ping away at their hand. It's like they make a run, and they access both of those things. But there's also a House of Knives ping.
Yeah, so you can look at this.
The more variables there are, the more difficult it becomes to manage them all.
Yeah, exactly. You can look at this as another small bump in the absolutely desolate road that you have to travel playing against Jinteki.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say, though, and why I think that this is a really important card and, kind of often overlooked as being like a pretty clutch ace in the hole type card, is I'm pretty accurate, right, if I described playing against Jinteki, or even just playing Jinteki, as a series of instances where the runner is just running into a spiky, thorny wall and trying their best not to die.
A wall of thorns, you might say.
Yes. There's just a wall in front of them that's covered in spikes and broken glass and Nickelback CDs, and they have to do their best, as miserable as it may be, to kind of stick it through and not die and, ultimately win, right?
Yes.
Neurally EMP is very important. Same with other cards that we got later on, for Jinteki, in that this is a card where you, as Jinteki, can push that wall into them, even just a little bit.
Yes.
Because this is an effect that happens on your turn, on your terms, for the most part. Most of Jinteki's damage and effects don't come in that flavor. Most of it comes from the runners running into that wall. You aren't yourself able to run that wall into them.
Yes.
But of course, this is an exception. Other exceptions, right, being that if you want to get, super, super spicy and splash in, like Scorched Earth or something. But Neural EMP being in faction, and also, being less difficult to play than something like Scorched Earth that requires attack.
Right. Runners make runs all the time. Landing a tag is a different question.
Right. So, again, it's still, the runner does still have to make mistakes and, miscount or misjudge or what have you. But a lot of times against Jinteki, as long as you make it to the end of your turn, that's in a lot of ways kind of a safe zone. Because as the runner, you feel pretty good as long as you made it through your turn and didn't die.
Yeah, that's fair.
While this is like, no. You left yourself on one, or perhaps even two, depending on if you are running 3 of these and had all 3 of them.
Oh, the humanity.
Yeah, like you left yourself on, between 0 and 2 cards, I'm going to kill you to death now.
Sure, and when you combine it with something like a Ronin, those margins change yet again.
Yeah. So just really important, because I think that ultimately, if you really boil down to it, is Neural EMP a great card? No.
The math on it is such that it takes up a lot of hand space for it to be a serious threat, and you have to draw into multiples of them. So,
Now, it does definitely look a lot better when you look at it through the lens or within the context of things like Potential Unleashed, or even Chronos Protocol.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
Because those, having a control, just play whenever you want, just source of 1 net damage is a lot more appealing when you're dealing with those extra effects.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up about Neural EMP is that its existence is more of a threat than average. What I mean by that is, if you're playing against Jinteki and it's some sort of Thousand Cuts or trap deck, then you need to assume that they have it. Part of this is because runners tend to run Jinteki's HQ less often, because that's where the snares live.
Yes.
There's nothing you want in their HQ, generally speaking. And so you don't know if they have them or not. You don't even oftentimes know if they're in the deck or not. So you just have to assume they exist. So the fact that this card has been printed lends some level of threat to Jinteki that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, it's definitely an important card to exist for sure. Because less so than snare, but in the sort of snare sense that we talked about
Yeah.
last episode, you get a lot of mileage out of the runner just having to honor it.
Yes.
And so I agree that it's a great card just for existing. It's almost even better just as a concept than it is in practice.
Yeah, agreed.
So
The pressure it creates exists whether or not it's in your deck.
exactly. I don't think that this card had a necessarily profound effect on the meta at any point. Like I did kind of bring up that later identities probably liked this, or this looked a little shinier to them.
Sure.
But I think that the effect that it had on the meta, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. That it exists, and so you gotta keep it in mind. You gotta honor it.
Yep.
Any other notes for an early MP?
I think that pretty well covers it. It's not a terribly complicated card.
Yeah. How do we feel about the flavor? It does have flavor text.
I'll go ahead and read the flavor text. The trick isn't hitting the person you were aiming at. It's hitting only the person you were aiming at.
See, I really like that flavor text, but I feel like it's a little bit of a mismatch.
Kind of.
Because it only does the 1 net damage.
Yeah. Just a little zap.
Yeah, like if this was like, neural fucking destruction and did like, like 3 net damage or something, like, okay, then that flavor text feels a little more fitting.
Yeah, but it's not like you're leveling a city block.
Yeah. Because it's good flavor text. I just think that it doesn't line up.
I would agree.
And then there's a cyber laser zappy thingy in some sort of cyber tube with 1s and 0s.
Yeah, some pretty classic cyberspace art.
Yep, not bad, but nothing to write home about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go fair to middling on an early MP's flavor.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, where are we on a rating for this bad boy?
I'm gonna give it a 3.
I am also going to give it a 3 because this is perfect 3 material.
Mm-hmm. It's good. It's reasonable without being particularly strong. It makes its way into decks, but not every deck. But it's not that interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. It's decent. Moving on. What do we have next?
Next up, we have Precognition. We're into the operation, so this is a Jinteki operation. 0 to play, no subtypes. It reads, look at the top 5 cards of R&D and arrange them in any order. And it is 3 influence. Okay, Aaron. Does this... So, multi-access was the determining factor of the majority of the Netrunner meta, I would say, for the entire time I played. It was incredibly important. So, why is Precognition so bad? With that in mind, where you're controlling what cards the runner accesses if they run.
I'm really regretting the order that we read these in, because as you read these, like I had some like banger like opening questions that I thought of for Zaibatsu and Precognition. So I'm just gonna drop the question that I would have asked you had I been the one reading the card.
Okay, fair enough.
And that's why did I forget about Precognition when I was talking about Zaibatsu Loyalty definitely being the worst card in the game?
It's a fair question.
I don't think this is bad. I will say I will get out in front of this that I don't think Precognition is as bad as Zaibatsu.
I would agree. Now justify why to me.
See, that's the hard part. Making the claims is the easy part, actually, putting any sort of reasoning or weight or argument behind them, that's where things get tough. So I think I got it. Because precognition does still, just by virtue of being an answer, a bad one, mind you, but just by virtue of being an answer to a question that is actually a problem as opposed to Zaibatsu loyalty, which is an answer to a question that is just not an issue.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because I've often, this has been one that I've, kind of, thumbed past in my card box as I've been going through it and been like, man, like, will precognition ever be good? Like, why is precognition so bad? It seems like, kind of like a pretty cool and interesting effect, all things considered. But the reason why is just arranging R&D is just not that good, because more oftentimes than not, knowing what you're going to draw next, despite sounding pretty strong, actually really isn't all that big of a deal.
I would agree, but particularly on your turn.
Yes. Because you're spending a click to do this, and a card. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're already spending resources that a huge amount of cards in the game do not pass this check of, is it worth putting in my deck, and is it worth spending a click on?
Right.
So you're already, like, that's already a huge cut to try to make, and this one is definitely not doing it.
Yeah, this is one that you would... I was going to say it always made the cutting room floor, but most often you wouldn't even consider it. And when you did consider it, it would usually be the first thing cut.
Yeah, I don't think I ever considered this card past, like, 4 set, like, I have to get to fucking 49 cards.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, if this was an instant effect on an asset like Zaibatsu loyalty, then I might think about it.
Okay, so what you're telling me is the way that we fix both these cards is to simply combine them together.
Make them the same card.
Yes. See, that would be awesome, is if you just combine them together and it had its interrupt effect. And when you do its interrupt effect, instead of, doing some dumb shit with, fucking stopping an expose, it just lets you rearrange the top 5 cards of R&D. See, yeah. That is something worth looking at, because then the runner definitely wants to go trash that.
Yes.
Okay, I think we got it. I think we solved it. But yeah, it's just like the top 5 cards of R&D, and you arrange them in any order. It's like, it sounds good, but it's just.
I would go so far to say that even it is good during a run, because Architect does this same thing, but Architect is excellent. The runner does not want that subroutine to run, because you're going to put Architect in front of R&D, and it's going to make the runner's life more difficult every time they're trying to access.
Yeah. So here, let me amend what I'm saying. It's not good enough for me to want to do myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't particularly care about going out of my way to look at the top 5 cards of R&D and arrange them in any order.
Yeah, it's proactive, no good. Reactive, in the right situation, there's something there.
Yeah, because, I mean, that is a good point with Architect. I mean, everybody loves Architect.
So, anything else to say about this?
No, nobody ever played this card because it sucked. So
yeah,
and I think we already talked about what would make it good, and that's it's not be what it is.
It's suffering from some pretty severe Jinteki core set syndrome.
This needs a this needs an effect where it's like you play it and then like gain a click or something if you haven't played one before. But even then, that would be way too strong. I don't know. Yeah, this is just this card. Yeah, this card just is either shit or way too powerful in the state that it's in as an operation.
Yeah.
Or no, I've got it. I've got how you make this card work.
Right.
When you play it, you gain a click, and then you remove it from the game instead of trashing it. I think that's totally fair. I think that would be completely worth looking at as like a one-off, 1 or 2 off maybe, and not like insane.
I could see it. I would think about that.
Yeah. Flavortown?
Flavortown. You want to read this?
Yeah. There was a new texture in her phantom cortex. It had always been there, she realized. It was everything and nothing. That's how I feel about that flavor text. It's everything and nothing.
More the nothing than the everything.
Yeah, what does that mean? That's just nonsense.
They're trying to do some like William Gibson wordsmithing with it, but it is not landing.
Yeah, they are not William Gibson. So
yeah.
Art's okay.
It's fine. It's bland. They didn't even manage to give a background.
It is just a straight up like white background, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
No ones or zeros. Come on.
I'm gonna give it a below average.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that the Zaibatsu loyalty flavor is better.
True. I would agree.
Alright. What are we slapping on Precognition here?
It's a 0. It's a 0 again. There's not enough.
So I am gonna stick to my guns here, and I did say, before we really got into the discussion, that this card is not as bad as Zaibatsu Loyalty. And so since we gave Zaibatsu Loyalty a 0, both of us, I'm gonna break the mold here. I'm gonna prevent this from also being a 0. I'm gonna give it a 1, just so that I can, like I said, stick to my guns and that it will reflect on the record.
I think that's fair. I'm glad you did that actually, because I think this deserves 1 more than Zaibatsu Loyalty, but it did not deserve 2 more.
Exactly. So one of us, I appreciate you doing what you did actually, because one of us has to give it the 0, so the other can give it the 1. Perfect. Precogs a 1.
This was not discussed beforehand.
It was not. So, let's move on.
All right. Next up, we have. Wait, is it my turn or yours?
I was gonna say, I think it's my turn.
Okay, yeah, you go for this one.
Good, because I've already got a fucking zinger here, and so
do it.
I've looked at the card for a half a second, and I already know what I'm saying. We have Cell Portal, which is a 5/2 res ice. It is a code gate deflector. It has 7 strength and a single subroutine that reads: the runner approaches the outermost piece of ice protecting the attacked server. D-res Cell Portal. And it is 2 influence out of Jinteki. So, Isaac. I'm going to ask you the same question that the flavor text asks. Where does it go? And why is the answer right in the trash?
Yeah, it goes in the trash because nobody is paying 5 credits for this every time the runner hits it. No.
Yeah,
just no.
This is one of the weird. This is like very much an early Netrunner card when you just kind of look at it and the numbers and.
It's bad math. The numbers don't work.
Yeah, it's just kind of silly. It's like you could almost see this as being like an AI generated Netrunner card. Like, what are these numbers with this effect and this like?
It was before they had figured out what credits were worth, kind of, and this really shows. And credits are not worth this. Yeah. This is not worth credits.
And this is also another casualty of what I mentioned in the last episode, was that this is before they realized that you can like give Jinteki ways to like do damage and stuff, and they won't be overpowered. I think this is very much a casualty of them thinking that like did the damage that Jinteki could do would be like too much and didn't want it to like be out of hand. So they were like, fucking Cell Portal. We don't want to give them any ice that does more damage or does anything crazy. So I don't know, just give them this shit.
Yeah, no, couldn't have that. Let me just say, in Cell Portal's defense, I have seen it in a deck.
I've not seen it in a deck, but I have heard stories.
Yeah, so the general idea where I have seen it is doing things with Cell Portal, Komainu, the Twins, and possibly Corporate Troubleshooter. You're welcome for all these cards, Steve. To basically give Komainu as many subs as possible, because Komainu keeps its subs throughout the entire run. So, runner encounters Komainu, it gains subroutines. Cell Portal dumps them back in front of the Komainu. Komainu gains more subroutines, and instead of having 5, it now has 10. And you can use the Twins to dip on this even further.
I do know the combo that you're talking about, but I don't think that Cell Portal is a necessary part of it, because
it's not a necessary part, but I have seen it.
Okay. Now correct me if I'm wrong on timing, structure of a run, and so on. Does the runner have the ability to jack out after Cell Portal fires? I think they do.
I believe they do. So I think the roll pool is required here as well.
Yeah. I think that's why Cell Portal isn't really, from what I remember, a part of it. Because I think, doesn't the Twins basically do what Cell Portal does, but just good?
Kind of, yeah. It's just you encounter that ice again immediately.
Yeah, whenever they're... Yep. Yeah. So you don't even need Cell Portal. You just need the Twins.
Yeah. Though Cell Portal can work with Whirlpool to just keep them in an infinite loop, as long as your money doesn't run out.
Yep. And then you can't keep them in too infinite of a loop, or the rules say that you have to break it or whatever.
Well, it's not an infinite loop in that way, because Cell Portal dumps them back to the beginning, they encounter Komainu again, and it's really whoever runs out of money first. If you're unable to res Cell Portal before they're unable to break Komainu without dying, that's the question.
Not a infinite monkey typewriter situation, just
right.
Whichever monkey runs out of typewriters first.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Fucking nailed it. So this card sucks. Anyway, back to
yeah, it's terrible.
Because 5 credits is a lot. 5 credits is not a lot.
Especially at the beginning of the game. This is just too spicy.
What I will say, though, is that 7 strength is I have a pretty tough time breaking that.
Gets your attention until David shows up.
That is true. But the fact that you have to res it over and over again is just...
Yeah, it's too much.
Just no way. I ran Chimera for a while, in a pretty early next design iteration.
Mm-hmm. Even the 2.
Yeah, and even the 2 gets a little too much to handle sometimes. It's annoying for sure.
Yeah.
But 5? You're meaning me? Every time I want to fucking res this thing, I gotta spend 5? And they could just jack out. It doesn't even do anything especially crazy. They could just leave. So
yeah.
At best, it's an end the run, which, granted, not bad, but still, 5 credits.
It's an expensive end the run when you have to pay for it every time.
Yeah. How do you make it good? How would you make Cell Portal good?
Give it a rest cost of 2. Make the numbers make more sense. Yeah. Make the runner encounter the outermost piece of ice instead of approach it.
I think that would be a better way to go with it. I think if it was 2 to res, at that point it's essentially a 7 strength in the run for 2 credits.
Yeah.
Which might be a little too spicy, even if you do have to pay for it over and over again.
Yeah. Possibly.
But I do think that if it forced an encounter on the next piece of ice, then this would absolutely be worth looking at.
Yeah. Then you're talking about something with some real effect.
Yeah. So I honestly, I think if that's just how it worked, if it just changed the timing structure to where they encounter it, I think that this would be a serviceable card. Still probably not good, but it wouldn't be doo-doo trash.
Not good, but usable in certain situations when you're trying to do something ridiculous.
Yeah, a fringe card. Fringe pick.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I reckon it's Flavor Town.
Well, we already read the flavor text of it,
We did.
which is not bad flavor text, and the art is okay. I think it's better if with the full version of the art. This is one of those ones that you got kind of a zoomed in portion of it, and you miss some of the effect, I think.
Yeah, to me, this art is kind of silly. It really like this because one of the best parts about original Netrunner is a lot of the art on those cards. More specifically, like the computer generated art for a lot of those cards. And this to me is like very reminiscent of that, which I guess you could take either as a good or a bad thing. But like the weird little circles that just have like a picture just superimposed into there, and one of them's just like a 3D render of like a dude, and then one's just like Black Mesa or some shit.
Yeah.
It's a little silly. Seems a little silly to me.
I do like the Tron Man on the full version, though.
Does he look more like a Tron Man on the version that I'm seeing and that the viewers at home will see? He very much just looks like it's like a fucking model from like Unreal Engine 3 or something.
Oh, so not that, man. Like on the full version, there's like imagine a Tron Silver Surfer off to one side.
Okay. Let me see if I can look this up.
I
do see. Okay. See, the I don't know why it's so zoomed in. It should be zoomed out, and let's see the fucking Tron Surfer guy. And,
yeah,
and the clip art monkey.
Steve, you're going to have to put up the Tron Silver Surfer here because otherwise the audience will have no idea what we're saying.
We're missing the two.
Right?
We're missing the two best parts of this: the Microsoft clip art monkey and the Tron fucking Silver Surfer dude. Yeah, actually, I tell you know what? This I'm gonna give the flavor an even worse regard, just because like, why did they crop it in this way? Like, I would be so pissed if I was the guy who did this art, like, and I saw the card and like what they chose to just fucking crop it to.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Damn, that is a fucking crime. And then later we find out that there's just other, fucking art. Zaibatsu loyalty. There's just like that's only like the lower like fourth of the card. There's like an entire other.
Yeah, seriously.
All right. Well, anyway, flavor I think is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, what number are we slapping on Cell Portal here?
I am going to give Cell Portal a 2. It's interesting. It's just very poorly executed.
I'm gonna give it a 1. Because I think that it's being interesting is not enough to make up for just how kind of shit it is.
Perhaps.
I
still like the Tron Man, even though he's not on the card.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're just a raving lunatic about talking about the Tron Man.
And I will never stop.
I will never stop talking about the Tron Man. All right. Do we have time for one more here?
I think we can do one more. So we have Chum. This is ice. It is a code gate. It is 1 to res and has a strength of 4 and a single subroutine, which reads: the next piece of ice the runner encounters this run gets +2 strength when that encounter ends if the runner did not fully break that ice due to net damage. And it is 1 influence. So, Aaron, why was this one of the few pieces of Jinteki ice that lasted a long time, particularly early Jinteki ice, I will say?
Just because unlike Cell Portal, this one has much more appealing numbers and a much more appealing effect.
It's always the numbers with you.
What do the numbers mean? Um, so I will say that this is probably my number one card that I always forget was in the core set. Every time I see this card, even now as I press the little next image button in OBS, I saw Chum and was like, "Oh shit, that's right. Chum is from the core set." I don't know what it is about this card and its design, but this I cannot scrub from my brain as being a Genesis Cycle card. Like,
Interesting.
every time I think of Chum, I swear that it's from one of the Genesis Cycle data packs.
There was a lot more positional ice in the Genesis cycle, in fairness.
Yeah, but anyway, to kind of run through Chum here about why it's pretty good, why it's not bad, is one that Sweet One to Res is a very nice place to be. One to Res for 4 strength, which 4 strength is pretty decent. Now, where it sort of starts to teeter off is that it is a subroutine that, in and of itself, doesn't do anything, which unfortunately does kind of make it lose a little bit of luster.
Mm-hmm.
Because the subroutine, as you very aptly paraphrased it, reads that the next piece of ice the runner encounters during this run has +2 strength. Do 3 net damage unless the runner breaks all subroutines on that piece of ice.
Yes.
So this doesn't actually do anything if all you have is Chum. Like, if this is in your opening hand, like if your opening hand is 2 Chums and 3 agendas, you're having a sad time.
Yeah. You need some sharks to go with it.
Yes. However, Chum put in front of, most everything is going to be looking pretty good. Because it's out of Yogg range, which is nice at 4 strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if they do choose to break it rather than whatever the next piece of ice is, then they're going to have to do some finagling with a data sucker token or a ice carver, whatever. They're going to have to work a little bit for Yogg to break this, or of course spend money if they're just using a more traditional breaker.
Yes.
So it's 1 credit for what is most of the time going to be a more than 1 credit tax for the runner, whether they choose to break Chum or deal with the pumped strength on the next piece of ice.
Yeah. Its numbers work pretty well. I will say it does have something of a slight hidden cost to it. Chum is always going to cost at least 1 credit to install, since you're putting it in front of something else.
Yes, that is a good point. And that it's 1 credit to res, but kind of comes with an asterisk, kind of comes with some fine print.
Yes.
And that it's got to go in front of something. So you are correct in that you're always going to have to pay that cost. But you can really apply that logic to every ice in the game, and that if it's not the first one you put down. So, I'm going to give it a little leeway on as far as that goes.
Fair. But it stuck around for a good while. Chum was common for quite some time and even splashable in other factions.
Yeah, at 1 influence, I definitely experimented with this at least 1 iteration of my next design deck. I think it ended up just not being good because, spoilers, if you're going to run next design, you want to be running ice that actually work when fired off of your ability.
Shocking.
And yeah, Chum ain't that. But as far as just giving an extra little oomph to all your servers for very cheap, I think that Chum is perfectly serviceable. I think other positional ice that sort of showed up, for the most part, missed the mark. Where Chum, I think, was in a pretty good in between spot of like being pretty good but not being great.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because other ones like I think Inazuma and Sensei, I think, and stuff like that. I just think
the numbers didn't work so well.
Yeah, the numbers in one way or another just weren't as easygoing as Chum. The pills they were trying to sell you were not as easy to swallow as Chum is.
Pun intended.
Yep. I'm trying to think when exactly this card really fell out of the spotlight.
I
Because
would
this
say
definitely stopped getting run, like, kind of midway through the game.
I would say kind of when Yogg fell out of favor.
Yeah, that's fair. When you didn't really care as much if something was out of, Yogg range or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it was when Honor and Profit came out though, because I will say that I think when Honor and Profit came out and Jinteki finally actually had some fucking ice to work with. I think that Chum might have gotten. It seemed to me at least that Chum would have gotten bumped out of a lot of decks.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
And I was gonna say, speaking of Inazuma, yeah, I don't know. I think I might have said that Inazuma is like kind of a worse Chum, but I don't know. I think Inazuma and Chum do different things, so I don't know. Maybe I'll walk that statement back. That
I would say, but they fit into the same deck slot. I would say.
yeah, but actually looking over Inazuma, I guess we'll get to it one day in the year. Once Netrunner's real, we'll talk about Inazuma. But anyway, I do think that when Honor and Profit came out, I think that Jinteki got access to a lot of ice that were just more appealing, and you didn't really feel as compelled to run Chum.
Yeah, agreed.
Because while Chum being pretty good, and I think that's right around where it fits at, is pretty good. Is it definitely was like a necessity, right? Like you didn't really have much of a choice but running Chum.
Right. There's only so much neutral ice that you can incorporate, and so you need some of your own, and this is one of the few pieces that were decent.
Yeah, so I think that certainly helped with people running it. I don't know, any other revelations to be had about Chum?
No, I think we about covered it.
Also worked as a good, just in and of itself being a like inside job screen and stuff. Because I mean, it's only one credit to res, so
That's fair.
just added little bonus. But what's the flavor on Chum? What flavor is Chum? It looks like cherry to me.
Well, if we listen to G. Noise Riley, you ever get that feeling like you're shark food? Pay attention to that feeling. So, whatever flavor shark food is, I suppose.
That's fair. I'm pretty sure it's cherry.
There are a lot of cherries in the ocean, after all.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give myself a point on that one.
Nice.
But yeah, no, flavor text pretty good.
I think it fits. I think I like the artwork. I like the digital ocean.
Yeah, I think that the artwork is pretty striking. I think relatively abstract, just kind of being like a cyber ocean with some blood in it or whatever. But I think it's very visually appealing, and I do like the flavor text and kind of the function to flavor, right? And that it's just kind of a warning of what's to come.
Yes.
You're not in any danger right now, but
soon.
Yeah, so I think it works, and yeah, I agree that I think the art is cool. So, what number do we put on Chum now that all is said and done?
I am going to give Chum a 3. I think I was a little tempted to rate it higher, but we've just had a lot of bad cards. I think a 3 is where it belongs.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if you look at this episode, right, 3 out of the 5 cards that we've discussed were like absolute stinkers. So you see one like Chum, and it's like, oh, that's refreshing. But I think it would be asinine to give Chum a 4. I think it's like absolute 3 category. Like pretty good, nothing crazy.
Had its role.
Yep. So I too am going to give Chum a 3 because that is what it deserves. And with that, I think probably a good place to call it an episode.
But what are you going to call it?
I don't know. Usually I just kind of, think of something random off the top of my head that I think might be a funny title. So, I don't know. We'll see.
And in order for us to find out, you'll have to watch it.
You'll have to tune in, which, I mean, really, you have already done for the past 57 minutes. So thank you for that. And we will see you guys in 3 to 7 business months. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.